Welcome to this talk. Jakarta EE is coming your way. I'm pleased to be here in Krakow at GeeCON. And before we start, I'll just remind you about the Slido application and do ask questions there. I have some really nice t-shirts. So the 3 first questions will get a t-shirt. And if there are no questions, I will throw them out. And those who sit closer will be more likely to receive them, because I won't be able to throw all the way. So. But I have 3 t-shirts there. My name is Ivar Grimstad. I'm the Jakarta EE developer advocate at Eclipse Foundation. I'm a Java champion, and I represent the Eclipse Foundation in the Java Community Process Executive Committee. I'm an Apache committer at the NetBeans project, and I run a local Java user group in Malmö in Sweden. This is my Twitter, LinkedIn, and GitHub. Feel free to contact me there if you have any questions, comments, or anything related to Jakarta EE or Eclipse Foundation or Java in general. Feel free to reach out. So when we talk about Jakarta EE, we talk about specifications. And when we talk about specifications, in our context, we talk about these 3 artifacts, or actually it's kind of 4 artifacts, but the 3 artifacts that are the specification is a document that describes the specification. It's usually an API artifact in form of a jar file or something that you can get from Maven Central, and a TCK, or a test compatibility kit, which is something we use to test that a compatible implementation fulfills the specification. So it kind of verifies that it does what it's supposed to do. And we can have multiple compatible implementations that implements a specification. And Jakarta EE that is one specification, but it's also a lot of specifications. And Jakarta EE is coming very soon. It's coming in Q2 2022. We haven't really announced a date yet. We were hoping for May 31, but it looks like we will have to go for June 23. So that's sort of when we are expecting the specification to come out. And we're in the final phases of getting this stuff out. And we had release review deadlines for all the different component specifications that Jakarta EE consists of. I'll show them in the next slide. A deadline for May 1st, and all of them more or less met that. I think May 3rd was the last specification going into a release review ballot. And that means a 14-day period where we vote and we verify that everything is correct and they've done what they're supposed to do. And then we will ratify the final specification of everything with Jakarta EE platform and the profiles. And we're hoping for June 23 to be the release date of Jakarta EE. So what is Jakarta EE then? These are the specifications I'm talking about. So you see, there are lots of them. And all the blue ones are updated in this release. So you can see the majority of them have updates. And the majority of the blue ones have a .0 release, and that means they are major updates. So they are potentially backwards incompatible, or they introduce so much changes that they found it reasonable to have a major updates. We're trying to enforce semantic versioning, but it's kind of, if it's a lot of changes, maybe they beef up the number anyway, even though it's not breaking anything. But if it's breaking anything, we're forcing them to do a major update. The .1 releases are updates since Jakarta EE 9. And the gray ones are the ones that are fairly stable right now and are not receiving any updates for this release. And down in the corner, you can see CDI Lite 4.0. And if you're paying really much attention, you can see in the second column here, you have CDI 4.0. And CDI Lite 4.0 is actually a subset of CDI 4, but it's a brand new thing. And I'll go into a little bit of detail about what's new in CDI 4.0 and especially CDI Lite. If we gray out these on the left side here, that are more enterprisey, if you like enterprise connectors, batch messaging and mail and that kind of things. And we look at the specifications we're left with the web profile. And the web profile has been with us since Java EE 6. So it's not a new thing, but it has evolved and it has increased a little bit. Like concurrency is new in web profile for this release. That used to be in the platform only before. The others have been there for a while. And if we remove the the more traditional web UI specifications that are focused on creating UIs, persistence, servlets, and that kind of stuff. We're left with a stack of specifications that are perfectly aimed for creating RESTful web services, microservices if you like, or headless services. And this is what we call the Jakarta EE 10 Core Profile. And Core Profile is something new we're introducing in 10. And I'll go into a little bit about detail about Core Profile in the next couple of slides. And the main theme of Core Profile is to target smaller runtimes. And by smaller runtimes, we're looking at runtimes such as Helidon, Quarkus, Micronaut, etc. Runtimes that doesn't intend or will implement the web profile or the entire Jakarta EE platform, but they can now possibly be Jakarta EE compatible with the core profile. None of these are actually said that they will do it this year. They may do core profile next year. What we know is that Wildfly will implement the core profile to verify the specification for this release. And I also think Open Liberty is targeting core profile later this year. So let's go through a couple of these specifications and some of the new stuff coming in them. And start with RESTful web services. And they have a 3.1 release. They originally also planned a 4.0 release, but they settled on keeping the backwards compatibility and update the API with requested features. And I'll list a couple of them. And you can see the URL structure here, jakarta.ee/specifications and /a short name for the specification. That's kind of where you find all specifications. So jakarta.ee is where you go to find things. Jakarta EE/specifications is where you find the list of all specifications, all versions, everything about the specification. That's the starting point. So that's the URL you should remember after this talk. It's Jakarta EE/specifications. So what does Jakarta RESTful Web Services 3.0 bring to us? Well, one of the things are a Java SE Bootstrap API. This has been available in Jersey and REST before, but what they're doing now is standardizing it so you can move it across implementations. And this means you can run RESTful Web Services without an application server. And I'll actually demo this later in this talk. They also add support for multi-part form data, so now you can upload and download files through the REST API in a standard way. You could do it with REST before, but now they've standardized it so you can move it between implementations. The JSON specifications, I won't go into the details there, but what they're doing is to provide features requested by the community to make lives easier for developers. And you can see here JSON binding is a major update and processing is a minor update. And binding is a major update because they change the method signatures in one of their methods. So it's a break-in change. That's why it's a major update. Otherwise, it's smaller features that the community has requested and kind of tuning here and there. Annotations, same thing. It's features requested by the community or other specifications, such as the @priority everywhere, and to use @nullable and @null also in a standard way. And these annotations were sort of forcing interceptors to pick up these changes, and expression language also has some updates and are removing some older API changes. So they are a major update. But interceptors is doing a minor update because they're picking up the changes done in annotations. So we have some sort of dependencies between these specifications. And that brings us over to CDI Lite. And CDI Lite, or 4.0 Lite, is targeting smaller runtimes, and it's designed to work in more restricted environments. And with more restricted environments, we mean that we want to add a new extensions API to enable the dynamic features of the portable extensions to be discovered at build time. So they introduce a new API, which is called build-compatible implementations, that are sort of duplicating what the portable extensions do, but they do it in a way so it can be discovered at build time then you are able to compile this to native using GraalVM. So that's kind of the thing with the new extensions API. The break-in change that forces CDI to go to a 4.0, in addition to adding the light, is that they're changing the behavior of beans XML. So if we're relying on an empty beans XML, meaning everything is injectable, like the discovery mode all, you're probably going to have to do some changes when you upgrade to Jakarta EE 10 because now the default is annotated. And that I'll show in a demo afterwards, how we can affect you. And they're also removing some deprecated things that were marked for deprecation earlier. But the important thing of CDI 4 is the new extensions API. I'm also going to go through a couple of these specifications in the web profile, and I'll start with security. And Jakarta security has been around since Java EE 8, and they are adding functionality so the application developer can configure your application in a secure way and add security without relying on anything outside or doing any proprietary configurations. So you can do it in a standard way within your application, and you can move it between application server vendors without doing so much changes in your code. Previously, this was a proprietary configuration depending on which vendor you were using. And they're adding some features there. Among the things they're adding is support for OpenID Connect. And they're also updating the lower level service provider interfaces, or SPIs, that is used by the security specification, and that is Jakarta authorization and Jakarta authentication. And these are specifications that are not necessarily you as application developer are exposed to these, but implementers are using these to provide the features that is specified by security. And they're also laying the foundation for future work to make security configuration much easier and also add more and better support for CDI. Persistence is a minor update, and they're adding some small useful stuff. I don't know if you're using UIDs in your database, but now it's actually a standard support for it using Jakarta persistence, so you don't have to do this conversion between a varchar or string to UID and generate them themselves. It's supported by the API. Other updates in 10. We're aligning with Java SE. And the way we're aligning with Java SE in Jakarta EE 10 is that we're saying that the APIs should be compiled using Java SE 11. Or they can be compiled with any newer version, but they should be compiled to 11 bytecode level. So the binaries are on 11. This means that if you're using Java 8 today, you won't be able to use 10. You have to raise your API source level in your source code to 11 in order to use Jakarta EE 10. But we're not satisfied with that. We want to use 17 and above. So what we're saying also is that the TCK should run with 11 plus, and that plus means 17 in our world. And that means that we as app developers, we can use 17 features as long as the runtime has been tested with it. So we're making sure that the TCK runs with 11 and 17. It's optional to do any of the releases in between, but we are making sure it definitely runs on 11 and 17. So that means that in the code we can use Java 17 features if we like. And the key is the plus here. So let's back a little and look at Jakarta EE 9, or 9.1. And there we did sort of the same thing as we do with 10, is that we had a Jakarta EE 9 that only could be tested on Java SE 8. So in order to be able to also facilitate testing on SE 11, we had to do a minor release, and that's the 9.1 release. The APIs are unchanged. They're compiled to Java SE 8, but we're making sure that it runs on 8 and above. And by doing that, at the time, Java SE was the latest LTS release. There are also implementations that are certified on 17, so it can definitely run on higher than 11. But 11 was the target there. the key areas in 9 was to lower the entry barriers for new implementers. And that means we removed some optional APIs and made so everybody doesn't have to implement everything optional in the specifications. And that makes it possible for new vendors, new players on the market to get certified with their application server without too much effort. We also wanted to establish Jakarta EE as a platform for innovation, and I'll show at the end of this specification how we actually have succeeded with this, because there are a lot of new specifications coming in, and also you can see all the stuff that is coming in Jakarta EE 10. And we wanted to make the migration from previous versions easy, and for 9 it was kind of special because we changed the namespace from JavaX to Jakarta. And why is this namespace thing so important, and why should we care? If we're not using Jakarta EE, why should I care about these folks are changing their namespace? Well, it shows that a lot of very popular frameworks out there are relying on Jakarta EE technologies. And Spring Framework 6 and Spring Boot 3 that will be released in, I think, in November this year, will be based on Java 17 and Jakarta EE 9. So they do this namespace change in Spring. So if you're using Spring today, you're probably going to be affected when you upgrade to Spring Framework 6 or Spring Boot 3. Because you probably, some of these namespaces are bleeding into your application. And they've done a tremendous job to ensure that everything in Spring Framework works on Jakarta EE and all the dependencies they drag in, because there are a lot of other products that are not under their control, but they have to make sure that all these libraries also works for Jakarta. And in November, this is coming out. So if you're using Spring, this affects you as well. And if you're not using Spring, if you're using Jetty or Tomcat or Hibernate or something else, just picking and choosing, they're also moving. So if you want to stay on the latest version of Jetty or latest version of Tomcat, you have to upgrade to the Jakarta namespace in your application. So it affects you even though you not think you're using Jakarta EE, or even if you're using Spring, or even if you're just deploying to Tomcat or just using Hibernate, you're probably going to do this namespace change anyway. And that is why I want to demo that stuff here before I get to the Jakarta EE 10 stuff. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an application on Jakarta EE 8. I'm going to transform it over to a Jakarta EE 9.1 application. And I'm using Glassfish for my target runtime here. So I'm running it on Glassfish 5, then on 6, and then on 7, finally. And we'll see what we need to do in between these migrations. And my application I'm using is a simple hello world application. And how many architects are here? Or consider themselves have an architect on their project? Yeah. So you know architects, when we design things, and we could do it with a simple system out print line, we'd rather introduce a database. And we have some tiered application, and I have a message in my database. I have a repository layer which is based on Jakarta persistence, and I'm using Jakarta Enterprise Beans as my business logic, and I'm using Jakarta REST to produce a JSON string serialized by JSON binding. And I'm also throwing in a Jakarta CDI extension to have a nice system out message to the person deploying this application. And of course, I could take this application and just transform it. And with transformation, we have a couple of tools. We have the Eclipse Transformer, and we have the Apache Tomcat Migration tool. And these are tools that take the bytecode. So if you have a JavaX-based application in a WAR file, you can just run it through these transformers and run it and drop it into a Jakarta EE 9 server, and it will work. Some of these servers even have the transformer built in, so you can just take the Jakarta EE 8 application and drop it in, and they will transform it on the fly and then run it. But that's no sport. But these tools are good for testing out things, to see how much work it would be, to see if you run on the next version. But you should really do it in source code. And the IDEs help us there. In IntelliJ, they have this transformation or migration from Java EE to Jakarta EE. It's really about Jakarta EE 8 to Jakarta EE9, but it works fairly well, and I'll actually use that in my demo. I can also do every step manually, and the IDE will do the first 2 steps for me, and do I update the POM file with a new version and fix the imports. But there are other things that I have to keep in mind as well, and I'll go through all of these step by step in the demo. So my application, I'll first run it, so we can just verify that it runs. So I'll redeploy it here. Take a look at the log, and you can see here in my log file, it says, hi there. So that's my message to the with the CDI extension. The actual application is running on Glassfish 5 here, and it's called Complete Duke. And I'll beef it up. So you can see here it says, how did Jakarta EE8? And so everything looks like it's running fine. And let's go and just see the code so we know what we're talking about. First of all, you can see I'm on Java SE8. I'm using Jakarta EE8, and that's it. So the POM files in Jakarta EE projects are usually very simple. You don't only have this provided dependency, so you don't have to mess around with all the other stuff. The application in itself is very simple. This is the application configuration. So it just says, hey, I'm running on an empty context there, and it's a Jakarta REST application. The resource class is saying the path is add hello. It's a get HTTP get method, and it produces JSON. And I'm using a EJB here to find the message, the greeting. And this EJB is injecting you can see it's an EJB by the stateless annotation here. And that means it has security and transaction and scalability and everything built in, so I don't have to think about that. And also, what it does is to call this Duke's repository, do a find all here, find the first, otherwise it hardcode something. So it's not that complicated business logic, but it's still there. My repository is on Jakarta REST. It has the persistence context and uses criteria language to just select everything from this Duke's greeting. And the Duke's greeting is my entity definition. It's in a greeting table. It has an ID, a message, and an email. So it's a very simple data model. And this is all there is about this application. I also mentioned the annotation, which the resource here is annotated with @Dukes. And this @Dukes annotation is one I've defined here. And it has the CDI extension that just looks for this annotation when the server starts up and prints the message. So with me so far? Fairly simple, but it kind of touches a lot of the Jakarta EE technology. So it's a fairly good example. Let's transform this to Jakarta EE9. And what I'll do there is actually to add a dependency. And I'll add 9.1. Sorry. There. So I have both 8 and 9 in my POM. I'll refresh it here. And then I'll use this refactoring in IntelliJ to do the Java EE to Jakarta EE. I'll choose only the Complete Duke module and run this transformation for me and just do the refactoring. And what you can see here is that all of my classes were changed. And what was changed with them is that they were changed, the import statements from JavaX to Jakarta. So that's how simple it is. It's one click and you're done. It's a refactoring in IntelliJ. So you don't have to kind of, you could also do a search and replace, of course. But you have to be careful that you don't do everything because some of the SQL classes and transaction are still in the JVM and they are on JavaX. So it's not all. It's a select, those that are under Jakarta EE. So that's it. Once I've done with that, I can remove this EE8 dependency. I don't need that anymore. And we're done with the first 2 steps. So I've updated the POM file, and I've done the import statement. The next thing is the schemas, or the XML namespaces. So let's look at what we have here. And in my application, I have one XML file, and that is my persistent XML. And my persistent XML, as you can see here, is using the jcp.org namespace. And we've changed this to Jakarta.ee, and we also introduced HTTPS. So what you have to do is to change jcp.org to HTTPS and Jakarta.ee, and also do that for the name, the location, and everywhere. And this is also a perfect certain replace kind of thing, but I'll do it manually just for demo purposes here, and at least the file. And the standard in Java EE and Jakarta EE is that we always have the version number of the specification in the XSD. And for Jakarta E9, persistent was 3.0. And here you can see it should validate for me here that I have to use 3.0 in order to do this correctly. So once I've done that, I can look at if you have other XML files like the Beans XML or Web XML or whatever XML that is under some of the specifications. You probably have to change the namespace there. And the specification documents usually have this header, so you can just copy it and paste it in. And some of the application servers doesn't even care about the namespace, so you can just run with whatever you have. And you can always just omit the namespace, but then you won't have code completion and validation in your IDE. So step 4 is to look at the properties prefixed with JavaX. And if you look closely here, in my persistent XML, I have these JavaX persistence schema generation. So I'm actually creating every time I start the server, drop the tables and insert this greeting message, which is in this file. And this is good for demo, but you shouldn't do it in production, or at least do it carefully in the production. So what I have to do here is just to change this to Jakarta. And you can see I get code completion because I have the schema here. And this may be properties in an XML file, or it can be properties in a property file or in a database somewhere. But the properties that are previously prefixed with JavaX has to be changed to Jakarta. So step by step, it's very simple, all this migration. But it's kind of tedious, and it just has to be done. But hopefully, it's only going to be done once. We're never going to change that again. So step 5, rename bootstrapping files. Bootstrapping files, you might ask. And yes, did I say I have a CDI extension? And not everybody has CDI extension in the application, so it's probably not that relevant. But since I have one, the way CDI extensions are defined is that you have the full qualified class path of your extension class, which is my Dukes extension, in a file called JavaX Enterprise inject SPI extension. And you probably shouldn't be very surprised that this one has to be changed, and it's not JavaX anymore, it's Jakarta. So it's very consistent what we're doing. But it has to kind of be done everywhere. The last one, the verify data and dynamic content, I'll just start the application and then get back to that. So now I'm not interested in Glassfish 5 anymore. I want to run it on 6.2, which is on Jakarta E9. So I probably have some. I haven't updated this, I guess. Let's see if it'll run. Oh crap. I'm not sure what this is about. Did I do something wrong with the namespaces here? This is the dream of every presentation, is to have a bug when you're doing this. It looks okay. Enterprise SPI extension. Looks good. Okay, oh my God. What I'll do is I'll stop the old one in case it's a port conflict or something. I'll try it again. If it doesn't work, I'll just go ahead and be a little adventurous. And let's move this on and see if we can get this to run in Jakarta EE 10. First, what I'll do is to upgrade the compiler source. And I'm going to update this one to Java 17. Let's see it there. Let's get these out. There we go. So I'll update it to Java 17. I'll see if the Glacier 7 will start. Yeah, it's the same. Oh, I think I know what it is. No, it's not. I'll actually go and see if I can. I may have to delete some repository. What was it called? It was org. Glassfish. Let's try to delete this and see if that will help. There you go. Debugging on stage, always fun. All right. I don't know what happened there, but it just happened. So I've now upgraded it to 17, and I've done a little bit more than I planned to, but let's go ahead and deploy it anyway. So I'll add the artifact, and I'll deploy it. Let's see if the CDI extension goes, and it says hi there, so that works. Let's open the application again, and now it's running on 8080. So I'll see it there, and you can see it says howdy Jakarta EE 8. And that's the problem. That's the dynamic content thing. It says Jakarta EE 8, and that is because I'm reading stuff from the database. And in my case, it's just a message. It's just hello Jakarta EE 8, you know. But in your application, it could be that you're concatenating strings to make a property string that has a JavaX prefix. Or you're doing some reflection and using some JavaX and concatenating some stuff you fetch from a database or property file or somewhere. So that's the dynamic things that you may or may not have to think about. And in my case, it's just the message saying hello to Jakarta EE 8 when I wanted to say hello to Jakarta EE 9. And luckily for me, that's easy to fix because I can just open the database. And I can do select from greeting. Let's just run this. And you can see here's my database, which is inserted for me. I'll change this to 9.1 and commit it. And now I've updated the database, so it should say hello to Jakarta EE 9.1. And let's take it a step further. You saw that I upgraded it to Java 17. Let's use some 17 features in the application. And what I'll do then is, first of all, I just want to make sure it doesn't insert this stuff in the database again. So I'll just comment out these. That's the kind of load data stuff. And let's do this Java 17 stuff. And in my resource there, I'm returning the Duke's greeting, and the Duke's greeting is my entity. And it's not a very good idea to return your entity up through the REST layer. You want to do some kind of mapping there, maybe. And in my case, I'll introduce a record. I know it was in Java 16, but if you're jumping between LTSs, it's new in 17. So rather than returning the Duke's greeting here, let's use a record. So I'll create a record called Duke's reading record. I'll add a message, and I'll add a date, like this. So that's my record. I just added the properties, and I'm good. Then from my Jakarta REST resource, I'll just return the record. In the business logic, I also have to return the record. And here's where the conversion happens. I find everything from the database, which is the Duke's greeting, and I map it from a greeting to a Duke's greeting record. Get message and local date now. And also, if I don't find anything in database, I also have to return a record. And this date should be, also I'll just use a local date now. So you see what I'm doing? I'm getting from database and just mapping it, and using the message, and I'm ignoring the email. So let's run this and see if it works. So I'll just redeploy it. How many thinks this works right away? None of you? Just one or two, yeah? I'll refresh now. And what happened? It's empty. Well, there is a secret, and that is, or it's not a secret, but the JSON binding that is used here to do the mapping here from the Duke's greeting record to the JSON string relies on the Java Beans properties. And Java Beans expect a getter. And a record doesn't necessarily have a getter, because the message here, if we look at it, is called date and message. So there is a trick, and that is to just call this one get message, and call this one get date, and redeploy it. And then magically it works. Right, so it's a hack, but you have to do it in Jakarta EE 9. Let's move on. So I showed you the 17 works. It has some quirks here and there, but you can do it. Let's also look at some Jakarta EE 10 features. So what I've done now is take my application, I've converted it to Jakarta EE 9, and I deployed it into a Jakarta EE 9 server. So let's look at this, this Java SE Bootstrap API in 10. And to do this, I have the same application, but I ditched the database. I'm just using the REST endpoint and hard-coded greeting. So let's look at this code. And I call this booty Duke, because it's booting. And here in my my POM file, I'm not having a war anymore. I'm using a jar. And I'm just using the Maven assembly plugin here, and I'm packaging the Jakarta REST API, and I'm using REST-easy as the implementation. If you're using Jersey, it's some other dependencies there, but that's something you have to figure out, or another implementation. You just have to figure out what to use there. I'll just use Jersey here, and I'm using Core and Undertow for the web server thingy, and the JSON binding. And the source code here is even simpler than the other one. The greeting here is just the greeting you saw here, and I'm using the record. So the record has this. I'm using this hack with get greeting and get date. The magic happens in the application configuration. Because rather than in the other case, when I drop it into application server, these two lines are the only thing I need here. But what I've done here is to add a main method to this. And I've used another class, it doesn't matter. But what you can see here is that it's this one I instantiate as the application. And then I use the SE Bootstrap, which comes from Jakarta REST. And just set it up with a context, a port, or it will do something default. And then just start it and say, hey, wait until I press Control-C. So let's run this one. And then I'll open the command tool here. Let's see, where were we? Development, demo, Buddyduk, and clean package. And I have to use the staging profile because Jakarta EE 10 isn't released yet, so it's in our staging repository. But you can find it on my GitHub. It's publicly available, so you can use it as well. You just have to configure either your Maven or your POM file to use the staging, then it will work. So I'll just build it here. It creates a jar file that I just start with java-jar, Buddyduk, jar with dependencies. And it's up and running. It's running on 8081. So let's go and look at 8081, Buddyduk hello, and it says hello, like this. And you can see it doesn't have the, it renders with the get hack that I used for the record. What's interesting about this is that I can move this one directly over to a Glassfish or a Jakarta EE 10 server without any changes almost in the application. So I'll just keep it running here. But what I'll do is to take this POM file here and I'll change it from jar to war. I'll see that, hey, this assembly thingy, I don't need that. So let's just take it, how much did all the plugins here. Let's just comment these out. All these dependencies I don't need. I'll add a Jakarta platform web API, and I'll use 10 here, and then I can take all these other dependencies. Because then I have an implementation and I don't need REST-easy or anything. So you can see the POM file gets much simpler. I just have this dependency, it's a war, but that's the change I'm doing, and that's all. So let's go and fire up Glassfish. I'll just stop the 6 because I think it's on the same port. So fire up Glassfish 7. And this is kind of the exciting part, because this failed brutally last time I did it, but let's see if it works. And take Buddyduk here, add it, and I'll actually tell you that it's going to fail, and I'll tell you why. Oh, it didn't fail. No, fine. That's even worse. Okay, let's see how this happened. I'm not sure what's going on here. Buddyduk, hello, should say, but now you can see it says get date and get reading. Why does it say that? Well, for some reason, I think Glassfish has solved this hack in their implementation, so we can actually just use record as we would have done and redeploy it. And it will say date. So the JSON binding implementation in Glassfish 7 actually has solved the records issue. So 17 works fine with 10. You can take that home. Also, how much time do we have? 6 minutes. Yeah, we can do one more demo. What I want to do is to take, and this is the one that is going to fail. I'll take the complete Duke, and let's move this one to 10 as well and deploy it to Glassfish 7. So I'll upgrade this to 10. Let's refresh it and go and deploy it. Complete Duke there, add it. All right. And now be prepared, because now we're going to see some red secrets, I hope. Oh, it doesn't work. I don't know. Something is weird. Well, so I'll tell you what I was expecting should go, and we can figure it out afterwards. But here you can see it works. But this one has the get date and the stuff. So here we can actually take the changes we did with this one also and just use message and date as well. So it actually does like make life easier for you if you're using a record. You don't need this hack anymore in 10. What I actually, I'm sort of surprised that it did work, and the reason why I'm sort of surprised is that I didn't think it should work because you can see in my application here, there is nothing here saying anything about CDI. So usually, if you get a CDI could not be found exception, which I got when I tested it 10 minutes before this talk, that means that Jakarta REST doesn't support CDI fully. So you have to add either do code changes to add the application scoped scope annotation, or it doesn't have it because it's not using it. So you need to add that, or you need to add a beans XML file that has the all and not default to annotations. But I'll leave it to you and see if you can get it to run locally. So, beyond 10. Jakarta EE 11, we'll start the work now. So if you have any input on 11, what you want to see in 11, this is the time to join the mailing list and start helping the projects out. This is my speculations. I'm thinking, should we raise the API level to 17 in the next version and have the TCK run on 21? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe we should stay on 11. It depends whether we want or need any features between 11 and 17 in the APIs. The implementations and the applications can still use 21 if you want. 21 is a new LTS release from Java. Jakarta config, they're working. We were hoping to get it in 10, but they're working with a standardized supportable configuration, such as the microprofile config does today. That will be provided by Jakarta config. I hope to get Jakarta MVC into the web profile. It depends on if enough people want that. And then you can use a simple MVC model to code your applications. Jakarta NoSQL is going on. Maybe they can have a release ready and be a candidate for 11. Jakarta RPC is a new specification that will standardize gRPC within Jakarta EE, so that's something that the work has been started with. We're also looking, or started a project called Jakarta Commons that will be kind of a shared space to have annotation utilities and stuff that is used by all APIs. Not necessarily a specification. We're looking at Jakarta Data, which will standardize the repository pattern for data access. This, it hasn't been proposed yet, but discussions are going on. So to sum up, Jakarta EE 9 is the version we have out today. That was a namespace release. Jakarta EE 10 is an innovative, community-powered release with a lot of changes, a lot of good stuff, and it evolves the platform. And the core profile is new. It will enable smaller runtimes to be Jakarta EE compatible. We are supporting 17, but we're limiting the APIs to 11, and we're making sure it runs on 11 and 17. These are some resources where you can find information about Jakarta. I have a blog called #Jakarta EE, which is a weekly update from Jakarta EE. If you're writing something yourself, you can get your blog aggregated on the Jakarta blogs. It's a very easy step-by-step guide how you do it. The demos are on my GitHub. It's called Jakarta EE Duke, so just Google that and you'll find it. I'll also publish these slides afterwards. So with that, I have 1 minute for questions, and let's bring up this Slido application. So, is it possible to create beans programmatically in new CDI like Spring using configuration annotation. Yes, it is. CDI has a programmatic API. You don't need to use annotations to do it. So yes, you can do that. And that has been possible from previous CDI versions as well. It's nothing new in CDI 4. But that's definitely possible to do. Does Jakarta EE 10 support some kind of description documentation API like OpenAPI? No, we don't. But MicroProfile does have OpenAPI support. So it generates Swagger, OpenAPI. So if that's something you want, I suggest you join the mailing list and request it. So Jakarta EE 10, OK, that was the wrong one that removed. So it was something about the UIDs and persistence. But let's see if I can get it back. As a guy from Eclipse Foundation, you shouldn't use Eclipse. You shouldn't. Yeah, I know. But you know, you use what you're used to. So I use NetBeans when I do real stuff. When I do demos, I use IntelliJ. That's a toy, you know. NetBeans is a real thing. Eclipse ID, I don't know. I haven't used it for 20 years. I don't care. UIDs, basic type of field, entity IDs. It's well, yes, it allows to be used. But if that's a good idea or not, that I'll leave to you. So there are different opinions about whether you should use UIDs as IDs in your entities, and many people say that that's not a good idea, but you can in persistence 3.0, yes. I guess I answered this one. Thank you very much.